Hey everybody, welcome to another week of Big League Bourbon. Tonight we've got Sean Tracey, a former Chicago White Sox, coming in to talk to us. He's also working his way back to play some independent league ball and see how it goes. Sean's going to be in here talking some bourbon, talking some baseball, talking what it's like and what it can be like. Sean's got a very interesting story to tell about his career and hey, let's get to it. I just want to say a big thanks to everybody that's showing up here. Got Blake Benson in here. Blake, what's going on, man? Glad I could get on the phone and talk to you this week. You got Bourbon Neophyte in here. Hey, Anthony, how's it going? Cheech Ardolino, the wrench extraordinaire, is here. Jim Morris. Tim Evans in the house. He's coming in from Chicago, so I'm sure he'll have some good questions, even though he's a North Sider. We won't tell anybody. First place White Sox. John Trombetta, JT, what's going on? Haven't seen you in a while, buddy. Miss you. Bird Ben's in the house. Hey, looks like we got a good start to the show tonight. Tommy D is here. Hey, Tommy D, you coming in town this week or what? That's what I knew last. So we'll see if you're in town or not. But everybody, here's our guest tonight, Sean Tracey. Welcome him to the show. Hey, Sean, how's it going tonight?
Not too bad, thanks. How are you guys doing?
Oh, I'm doing good tonight. It looks like everybody in here is doing pretty good. So let's get to it, man. So you came out of high school, worked your way to junior college, and you were drafted out of junior college and started your professional career, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, 1 year at UC Irvine.
Oh, okay. Right
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
All right. I
So
didn't know you had a year there. That's awesome. So you got some D1, you got some junior college, and then into the minors, huh?
yeah, it was a fast ride. I went to junior college to play football and baseball and kind of figure out what I was going to do. And next thing you know, my path kind of evolved on the mound, and I went from being a fifth outfielder to a number one starting pitcher, and didn't really look back. Didn't play football my sophomore year in junior college, and next thing you know, yeah, I was going to UC Irvine for a year and drafted by the White Sox in the eighth round, and yeah, that was kind of my 3 year college experience.
Right on. So, what's it like to transition from an outfielder to a starting pitcher?
It was a lot of work at that time. I had some pitching experience in high school, but I wasn't a year-round baseball player, and I didn't really try and pitch year-round, or even really train as a pitcher in high school. It was kind of like, okay, Sean, throw a bullpen, you might throw this week, but it was never like, hey, how many bullpens on the year, or hey, let's really put our mind to this and try and um, do something with pitching. I was told by guys who were older than me that I had talent in pitching and that I really should be putting time into it. But when you're young, you don't want to listen to guys who are older and they've gone down a different path, and why listen to them, kind of thing.
Right on. So, as you're making that transition, what was the moment that you knew that pitching was the thing for you and it was time to put up the bat and the mitt?
Uh, I think it was a big moment that you can look back on. I was sent to Santa Barbara to go learn what it was like, or what it was going to be like, to hang out with Division I pitchers and guys who were playing baseball year round above the 19-year-olds age cap. What are the college guys at the elite levels? What are they doing all summer long? So it was kind of at that moment when I knew I wasn't going to play football going into my sophomore summer in junior college. That was kind of the moment where it was like, all right, here we go. No more football, no more gridiron. It's time to really put our focus into this pitching journey and see where we can go. And
Nice.
that moment came, I guess, specifically my freshman year in junior college, starting a game against Dixie Junior College at the time. up in St. George. It's an early spring game. It's really cold outside, night game. Maybe wind chill, putting it below 40 degrees, and coming out of California Junior College, it's probably 10 to 15 degrees colder than what you're going to see on a cold spring game in California. So it was really cold. Anyways, it was a short outing for me. I got hit around the park. Apparently I hit above 90 twice in that game. And that's when my coaches came back to me the next day and said, look, you have a talent. You can throw the baseball. We don't know how far you're going to go in football. You should probably consider pitching over your future in quarterbacking.
Nice.
Yeah. So, that was kind of that aha moment. Like, all right, let me call my parents and tell them that I'm going to be going to Santa Barbara this summer. So,
there you go.
And if you're not familiar, the listeners aren't familiar, the Santa Barbara Foresters, really prestigious summer program. They're going for national championship number 9 or 10 this summer in the NBC World Series. So it was kind of a big deal.
Right on. Yeah, the summer ball, man, it gets pretty intense, especially when everybody's working to go play in that NBC World Series, especially nowadays for what it's evolved into. I've seen teams put together of guys that are former players now that work their way back through the NBC World Series as well.
Yeah, we that summer of 2000, we finished in the top 10. That was before the Foresters were really a national championship brand type of team, where we were still building. We had a lot of talent. I was carrying bags that first summer. We had Chad Qualls on that team before he went pro.
Nice.
Jamie Shields was on that team before he signed a contract. So we also had Ryan Spielborgs on that team.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of depth. And yeah, I was that guy in the back of the bullpen carrying bags, catching bullpens, and really trying to figure out, because I could long toss and I could be athletic and throw a football, but when it came down to competing and throwing strikes and doing the little things that pitchers need to do, it was a little rough around the edges.
Nice. Yeah, you definitely have to put in your time when you're walking into a team that has a lot of talent like that and you're the youngest guy on the team. I remember what those days were like in college. You get there, all of a sudden you realize your new job is carrying all that stuff, amongst cleaning up the dugout, cleaning up the bus, all those fun things. It's just putting in your dues, man, putting in your dues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. So you get through Irvine, you get drafted. Where'd you get sent first off?
So I got sent. My initial assignment was Bristol, Tennessee, in the Appalachian League. We had a great summer. We started off kind of in that Bull Durham clip. We were 3-13 in a short season Appalachian League schedule, and we kind of just looked around and we were kind of confused as to why we were 3-13. We had too much talent on the field to be 3-13, and we also kind of wondered why our coach at the time didn't really panic. Come to find out, Nick Leva had a lot of time in baseball, a lot of experience, and he wasn't panicking. He knew what kind of talent he was dealing with. He was actually kind of sent there on a special assignment that year to deal with some of the talent that he had. And we turned it around. I can't remember what kind of winning streaks we went on. I think it was within the rest of the summer. We went on 3 or 4 double-digit winning streaks, where we were winning for 2 weeks at a time, and then we dropped one. I think it was 11 game, a 12 game, and maybe a 14 game, something like that. Where August we won 20 games. August we were on fire, and maybe a few more. But anyways, we ended up winning the Appalachian League. Had a great time, And yeah, that was my first assignment.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Appy League, all those short season league teams, man. That's where you really get to cut your teeth, find out what it's like. You get those fun road trips and late night road trips at that. Not the greatest hotels, you know. You get to gel with the other guys on the team because there's not that much to do other than that, and that's when it all
Yeah,
starts to come together.
not to cliche it, but first road trip of the summer, bus broke down. And then like you were saying, yeah, you go to some of these other team or towns in the league, in the Appy League, and you get to your hotel and you're looking around and you're like, oh, okay, well, we're just gonna go over to the room next to us because there's nothing to do in the town or nothing is open after our game.
Right.
And you kind of, like you said, you acclimate to that mentality of, oh, okay, well, nothing is open. You come from a college perspective to where after a game on a Friday night, there might be something going on right next door to your apartment. Um, and pros and cons to that where you can go home and um, have a distraction. Whereas you're playing pro ball and you go home and you're just in the room, and your biggest distraction might be what kind of video game back then. What kind of video games are you going to play? You're going
Right.
to be now, like with the smart devices and your cell phones. Who knows? It's probably a lot different. But 20 years ago, yeah, you're uh, looking to see if the bonus first rounder bonus baby brought his whatever system he had, and if he was willing to the Xbox or whatever it was, who knows. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. I was lucky enough to have a couple of those guys on the first team I played on, and those guys brought all that stuff with them every single trip, man. Like they had two extra bags they brought with. That was all that stuff. So it made some of those road trips better than they could have been. Some of those rooms were still hell, man. No air conditioning or just crappy ass hotels. I was in the Penn League, so
Okay.
there's some great places like Oneana and Hudson Valley, and yeah,
Right.
there's some special ones.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll never forget our first bus breakdown. We actually had a goose fly through the front windshield of the bus. And that was on the road trip from Pennsylvania to Vermont. That was already a 14-hour bus trip, and then the goose had to take us out about halfway through. And we sat
Oh,
on the side of the road for 2 hours.
jeez. Sounds like a good one.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. It was definitely interesting. So I'm gonna make a little transition, talk a little bourbon. So bourbon game, man. What's your go-to?
I'm not really that big of a drinker or a bourbon guy, but I mean, if you're gonna twist my arm and tell me I have to choose a bourbon, I wouldn't even be able to tell you. I mean, I've been behind the bar as a bartender, and I wouldn't even have like a choice as a bartender's special. You know,
That's all right, man. There is
yeah.
nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I just
If
get to ask those fun questions being, the show, Big
what
League
what
Bourbon.
is yours?
Mine, lately I've been on a Four Roses kick.
Okay.
The Four Roses single barrel selects. Those are pretty tasty. It's that time of year when they come out. They have 10 different recipes that they work with. So it becomes kind of like one of those hunting games when you're running around looking to see which ones you can find that year. And yeah, I found a couple recently, so kind of been on that kick, just having those as they come out. Like I said, one time a year.
So you're more of a seasonal type palate for your bourbon.
Um, I, I kind of bounce around all over the place. I like trying different stuff, different distilleries, especially now with so many new distilleries popping up compared to what
Uh-huh.
it was 10, 15 years ago. There's a lot of craft distilleries out there. So the amount of choices that you have these days is almost infinite, especially when you get to different regions across the country
Uh-huh.
because of the way distribution works. So you can get in different areas and try different stuff that you can't get all over the country. So that makes it a lot of fun too.
Okay. As long as mine's on the rocks, that's pretty much how
Hey, there's nothing wrong
it
with that.
has to be poured out on the rocks for me to enjoy it.
Nice. There's nothing wrong with that, man. There's no wrong way to drink a bourbon. I'm telling you,
Yeah. Well, that's
you
good.
know. Yeah. If somebody tells you there's a wrong way, don't listen to them, man. Everybody likes it their own way. A couple drops of water, a couple ice cubes, neat, in a cocktail. There's no wrong way to do it. The whole purpose of it is to enjoy it and have your own experience with it to the point that you really do get to enjoy it and create some memories and share some stories with friends.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way I look at that. All right. So let's transition back into baseball. You spent a couple years in the minors with the White Sox, worked your way up into their top prospect list, and then you got the call. What was that like the day that you found out you were going up to the show?
That day, man, what was it? I believe Charlotte was at home. We were in South Carolina. Obviously, if you're familiar with Charlotte used to play below the border.
Yep.
So we were there at Fort Mill, and there was a phone call. It was like during batting practice, and my manager at the time, Razor Shines, I think he tucked away from being in the clubhouse for a moment, and then he came back out and he kind of addressed the whole locker room, and he acted like he couldn't see me. He's like, "I'm looking for Sean." His voice is loud and it projects, and kind of made it seem like he didn't have good news to break to me, kind of looking for me, kind of
Mm-hmm.
busted me up a little bit, like I had done something wrong. And he pulled me in the office, and he told me something like, "You're not making your start this week." And of course I'm like, "Oh, well, why?" And then he tells me, "Because you're going to Chicago." And you go through a lot of like, holy cow, like, really, wow, oh geez, who do I need to call, who do I need to tell, like, wow, thank you, Razor, this is incredible. You're just flooded with a lot of thoughts and a lot of sense of urgency at that point in time. And you're also kind of knowing that every move you're about to make is very important, and you don't want to screw up,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. At that point in time, I think we were trailing the Tigers a couple games in the Central. They had the best record in baseball, so it was kind of like, oh geez, you're going up there and you gotta make an impact, or they're gonna find someone else, kind of thing. And good luck. So that was kind of how that went. Couldn't really tell you anything outside of, like, I remember the flight landing in Chicago. I remember catching a town car to the ballpark, and then getting into the stadium and doing that. I definitely remember. First couple interviews, sure, those type of things. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I called my parents, let them know, told them to try and book flights and get to Chicago for the weekend, which they did. And
Nice.
yeah, it was pretty cool. A lot of pressure, definitely,
For
going
sure.
into that weekend, because not only were we trailing the Tigers, but I was called up the weekend that it was right before the All-Star break, and I think it was the last time they played the Tigers at home before the All-Star break. So they're trying to gain some ground. It was a little intense that weekend.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Now, get to the clubhouse. What's the one memory that sticks out getting in that clubhouse the first time and walking in?
I I was who I was greeted by. I just remember being greeted by some people that made me feel at home, and you know, kind of, you know, I was greeted by guys I went up in the system with, but I was also greeted by guys who have been around and guys that are now in the Hall of Fame. So you had, I think, greetings from both ends that made it feel comfortable and welcoming.
That's awesome. That makes it a little bit easier.
It really does, especially when the the guys that are going to the Hall of Fame, take time out of their routine early in the day, right away, to come over and welcome you, and make you feel, like you said, at home.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Tim Evans asks, who was the best person you met in the clubhouse?
I mean, that's a tough one because you have a couple guys. I realize my light out here on the patio is getting pretty dark, but you have a couple guys that
Yeah.
really, I mean, Paul Canerco and Jim Tomei, as far as position players, they really made my time and experience really neat. Pitchers wise, you have Mark Burley and John Garland. Those two really went out of their way in spring training and while I was up to make me feel at home and make me feel part of not only just like the team, but part of the guys. And that goes a long way. Sometimes you feel it's a business. You get that vibe from other guys that they're just in there doing their thing. But those guys really try to make the clubhouse a family type atmosphere and really wanted to make it welcoming.
Nice. Now he also asked the flip side of that question. Who was one of the worst in the clubhouse or someone you just didn't care for there?
I mean, I think it's obvious, Brzezinski, it just, without saying anything in great detail, it wasn't just me, but it was several other people or several other players and teams post that experience. I can't say much because he has a ton of time, and obviously he did play the game successfully, but a lot of people didn't appreciate his approach.
Right on. And I appreciate the answer, man.
Yeah.
So, your first night out there, tell us what it was like warming up, wondering if you're coming in the game, what was going on, what's going through your head.
So the debut night, I can't really tell you, like, it was one of those that, hey, you're going to get in the game tonight. We're going to try and get you in the game tonight. Get your first appearance said and done with, and go from there. It was I believe a Wednesday night baseball game too on ESPN.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure. Maybe that was another one. It was either a Wednesday or Thursday. You'd have to look back on the date of the game. The I don't know. You're warming up and you have all the adrenaline in the world. You're going into your first major league game. I remember so much adrenaline. I could barely feel the baseball. I could barely feel my body. And it was funny. The warm-ups out on the main field, I really think a couple fastballs were like 87 miles an hour. I was so scared. So, like, nervous and just uncomfortable that I just remember just hit the glove. And, a couple outings later, 2 to 3 outings later, you're warming up at 92, 93, 94 because you're now starting to embrace that energy and starting to understand that adrenaline and how you're going to feed off of it. So, yeah, my first outing, yeah, I remember it was kind of like my first outing in rookie ball against the Kingsport Mets back in the Appalachian League. Threw in relief, didn't try and throw hard at all, just tried to hit my spots. I was very, very nervous of not hitting my spots. And then later on in my career, I was really focused on how fast could I make that radar gun read. So it's crazy how you go in your pro career in certain windows. You go from, hey, I can't miss my spot to, hey, I can't miss that mark on the radar gun or I'm out.
Right.
And so it was weird. Very, very weird because my first outing in the big leagues with that I can't miss my spot mentality, I didn't do bad. And yeah, just kind of funny. I remember I got a strikeout and I was able to move the ball around a little bit. And I pitched 2 innings against the Tigers. I think it was a long relief. We were down. We didn't come back and win that night, but 2 relief, 1 hit, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. That was my line.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. One of our guys in here is from the area in Bristol there, and he said that field was Boysen Cox Field, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's the name.
Yeah, Marty's from that area. Grew up down there, so he was excited to know somebody that played down there is coming on the show. So he was all down with that. Tim Evans also asked. He's like, "Were you with? Were you up during the time that the Michael Barrett and AJ Przinsky fight happened?"
No, I actually was called up like 3 weeks later.
Okay.
And no, I wasn't there for that. But, that was in that whole month of baseball where AJ was hot and he was, playing the game with a lot of flair. And some guys around the major leagues didn't necessarily agree with the amount of flair that he was playing the game with.
Right.
And that kind of, I remember being a big deal when I got called up, that because we were about to play the Cubs again, and it was just kind of like that was a big deal in the clubhouse.
No, I bet. There had to be some fire going back and forth in that whole situation. So definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you feed off of it as far as that rivalry with the Cubs and the White Sox. That as a player that grew up in Los Angeles, you don't really understand the magnitude of it until you're exposed to it, and you see one family, 3 generations, and it goes Cubs, White Sox, Cubs per generation gap. And you then understand, like, okay, this is a big deal. Like, grandpa's a Cubs fan, grandson's a Cubs fan, but dad's a White Sox fan. And, it takes the dynamic to a whole new level. You don't get that kind of situation really in Southern California, as far as with the Dodgers and the Angels. A little bit, you see it here and there, but certainly not as intense as the Subway Series that you have in Chicago.
Definitely. Yeah, it's still, ever since that series with Barrett and Przinsky, every year, it never fails. It gets brought up right before that series is starting. There's definitely that edge back and forth, so that's one of the things that has made that series special, on top of what you talked about with the different generations of fans, even, within families. So that's definitely fun. I always enjoy seeing it on TV here. That's for sure. So you're working your way through the career. Things are going good. What happens next?
Well, so I get my call up, and I'm there for whatever 8 days, my first week, and everyone goes, "Oh, hey, what happened next after your debut against the Tigers?" And that's where that whole uh, you know as they say, the honeymoon's over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what happened. A week into being a big leaguer, my honeymoon was over. And my honeymoon ended one night in Texas, where I was sent in to execute an order that I didn't necessarily believe in, and other guys on the team didn't necessarily believe in either. So it put me in an interesting spot as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
And with everything that had gone on, like we just talked about with the whole Michael Barrett thing,
Yeah.
you have a situation where the White Sox were willing to fight to defend the crown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, let me see if I can get some light going here. Okay, so
Right
the
on.
White Sox were willing to fight to defend the crown, and it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, if we can't beat them, well, shoot, let's fight them, And
Mm-hmm.
we're in Texas, we're in Arlington, and Hank Blaylock has hit 2 big home runs on the night, and AJ's been hit twice on the night, and here we go. Here's the phone call. But putting a timeout to that little story, the first at bat, AJ gets hit with a changeup. Okay, his scouting report: soft in and hard in, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
occasionally away, but it
Yeah.
wasn't traditional where it was soft in, hard away, because he was looking for everything away all the time. So he's also facing that night Vicente Padilla, who loves to pitch inside.
Yep.
And first at bat, 81 mile an hour, 82 mile an hour off speed pitch into the elbow protector. And okay, no big deal. But by the 5th inning in his second at bat or 4th inning, whatever it was, this time he gets hit with a fastball, a legitimate fastball off the arm. But it's like not really a big deal, because the first at bat, obviously being an off speed pitch, we all
Right.
know that there was no intent there. Yeah, I'm gonna come after you with a changeup, and I'm gonna hit you in the elbow.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't happen.
And that's my message to you. Like, come on, really? Like, so, anyways, the second time he gets hit, there's a lot of show involved, a lot of antics, like big body language, taking the elbow brace off, and a lot of pouting back into our dugout. Mind you, I'm in the bullpen with everyone else in the bullpen there in Arlington. So we're 375, 400 feet away, just kind of watching the show that's being displayed. Just kind of shaking our heads, going, "Man, this is tired. What a tired act." And within a half an inning, the phone rang in the bullpen, and our bullpen coach picks up the phone. Doesn't have a whole lot of life in his voice after he hangs up the phone. During the conversation, it was just kind of like, uh-huh. hangs up the phone, gets off the phone, tells me, he goes, Tracy, get up, get loose. And everyone in the bullpen was kind of like, huh? Because it was with 2 outs. And the veterans in the bullpen knew that the phones hardly ever call with 2 outs. You know, never. You don't stir someone up in the bullpen with 2 outs in the top of the inning and they're going to go into the bottom of the inning. You just don't do that. Anyways, if you're Ozzy again, you do whatever you want. And, you know, that's how it was. So the bullpen coach gets off the phone. Tracy, get up, get loose. You're going into the bottom of the 7th. You got to face Blaylock, and you got to hit him. No questions asked. And I'm just kind of like, what? What do you mean? You got to hit him. You got 4 pitches. You got to hit him. No questions asked. And I'm just kind of sitting back going, under what validity? You know, where in the game that I have watched every single pitch, where is this valid to do this? I mean, did I not get that unwritten rule memo for my entire baseball career? That, let's see, sure, they're beating us right now, like 8-2. We haven't stole a base late in the game. We haven't done it. Hank Blaylock didn't get super huge out of the batter's box. He didn't pimp that home run. The second one, I think, was upper deck too. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, he could have slapped everyone in their dugout high fives. It was such a huge blast. But he didn't, and he barely got big out of the box. But for some odd reason, that wasn't good enough for Ozzy. And, you know, he had to get retaliation. He didn't send his starter in for one more inning to do that work. He sent me in. And I remember being a rookie, kind of knowing my position there, going, man, what a draw this is right here. Okay. And so I asked the bullpen coach, hey, what if I miss? Oh, well, you got 4. Oh, okay. All right, just checking. The other thing that was going on at the time, mind you, there was 2 outs in the top of the 7th inning. So I had to get totally loose to be running out, you know, onto the field within, who knows, three game pitches within 45 seconds, really, within 60 seconds. So we had a merry-go-round. Like, the bullpen coach had a baseball. He gave me a baseball, but then he got a baseball from a reliever who got a baseball from a different reliever who got the baseball from the bullpen catcher, right? So as fast as I could throw a ball to the bullpen catcher, he's handing a ball to reliever number 1. Reliever number 1 throwing the ball down back to the bullpen mound to reliever number 2. Reliever number 2's giving the ball to bullpen coach. Ball goes to me. So there's about five balls in the shuffle in the mix for me to throw that. And the other kicker was my bullpen catcher was sitting in the left-handed batter's box. So the thing that some people might not know, in the major leagues, if a field, say Wrigley Field, with the bullpens out on the field, you're not going to have cameras on the bullpens. But say an old Arlington Stadium where the home dugout or visitor dugout can't see the activity in the bullpen, they're going to be on camera, right? And, you know, hopefully a lot of people do know that because all the bullpen games that are on ESPN and whatnot. But at that point in time, not a whole lot of people were aware that, okay, well, Buck Showwalter, the manager for the Rangers at the time, he was watching my warm-ups and he was watching how my catcher wasn't sitting behind home plate. And so I have friends that are Texas Ranger alumni. They were actually at that game in uniform for the Rangers. And they remember Buck Showalter calling Hank Blaylock over to the monitor in the dugout and going, hey, you see this? Okay. And by the time everything finished up. I'm running out to the field. I'm throwing my first couple warm-up pitches. Buck Showwalter is walking over to the home plate umpire. They're both looking at me. And Buck Showwalter goes walking back to the dugout. Home plate umpire comes out to me and goes, "Hey, both benches have been warned, right, Rook?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Okay." Anyways, long story short, yeah, I mean, that's from that point in time. First pitch, fastball in. Blaylock's in the back corner of the box. Didn't want to have anything to do with that at bat. Barely took a read step. Turns his shoulder. Ball misses him. Now I'm like, okay, here we go. I threw my first pitch. Did I throw it behind him and get the immediate ejection? No. But did I throw him a brush back and did he, kind of move his shoulders? Yeah. Okay, well, let's see what AJ is going to do here. And AJ puts fastball away. So right then and there, I'm like, that's interesting. Well, he puts fastball in, but I've got 4 pitches to do it. We're going to play this cat and mouse game. I'm kind of technically off the hook right now.
Yeah.
Like if he really wanted beef right now, and if he really, the unwritten rules say don't acknowledge it. Oh, okay, that's why he's putting fastball away. Okay, I'll throw a strike one. Boom, strike one. Counts 1-1. Now it's like, okay, let's see what AJ is going to do now. He puts fastball in. And the whole time I'm also knowing the rule of 29 other teams are always watching, right? And that rule was kind of told to me in spring training that year, going back to John Garland and Mark Burley taking me under their wing. We had the "We will defend our crown" speech in spring training. And Ozzie said, yeah, we will fight anyone. We will protect, because the White Sox, prided themselves as the black and silver, like the Raiders of baseball. That's one of those things. And like, okay, sure. I was brought up under a different school of baseball, not only from high school, college, but to, even levels of pro baseball. Like, I'm sorry, but if 29 other teams are always watching, and Ozzie's going to sit there and fly off the handle and be a narcissistic abuser to the game of baseball, I'm not going to go on that ship with him. Sorry.
Right.
And getting back to it, Burley and Garland said while Ozzie was giving his like Tony Montana, like wig out, flip out speech of like, we will fight anyone, including a fly that challenges, our World Series trophy. Burley and Garland said, hey, Trace, we are vets. We don't have to do this. You're a rookie. It's up to you if you ever get put in this situation, what you're going to do. But just on the record, off the record, not on the record, we would not protect Przinsky. We'll protect anyone on, the given lineup card, except for Przinsky. Period. And you fast forward now to less than a month after my little incident in Texas against Blaylock, and you go to John Garland versus Ian Kinsler. Right?
Yep.
We should all know that. And we all know the two fastballs that Garland throws behind Kinsler. And then Ozzie calls timeout and comes walking out onto the mound and does his little, charade. And then Garland eventually gets out of the inning. But we all saw some things that went down in that moment where Garland gets out of the inning and he locked eyes with Ozzie and put all of his stuff down very quietly, very calmly. Basically went up to Ozzie and said, hey, look, don't you ever do that to me again. I am a Major League All-Star. I'm a veteran. I've won you a World Series. I'm not a rookie. I'm not Trace. Don't you think you can do that? And that was really why he got traded at the end of that season. he stood up for me at that point in time. You know, and he right there, I mean, he had the order to hit Kinsler, and it wasn't just to do it in the game. It was just Ozzie. What it boils down to is it's Ozzie with the whole Nolan Ryan and Robin Ventura history.
Right.
And the crazy thing was, I didn't, in that moment when I'm running down like the tunnel and I'm in Arlington and I'm sent in to hit Blaylock, I was overwhelmed with so many other things that were going on that I didn't even think about that whole Nolan Ryan, Robin Ventura thing. When that fight occurred back when I was a kid, we were at Lake Powell. We weren't, picking up the newspaper every single day as kids, checking out baseball. We were also playing football. It kind of like wasn't really a big deal. And we didn't really buy into it. I mean, yeah, we loved Nolan Ryan at the house, but we weren't really following Ranger or White Sox baseball in the 90s. We were following the Angels and the A's and the Giants and the Dodgers, West Coast. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that Ozzie really, I think, in that whole thing, he had unfinished business, because if you look at film when he was a player and that whole Nolan Ryan, Robin Ventura fight, Ozzie didn't get a piece of anyone in that fight. He was just dancing around the pile like,
Yeah, he was bouncing around on the outside of the pile.
Yeah,
He was never involved with
didn't
it.
get a piece of anyone in that fight, and he talks a big game about this and that, but you can see it. He's not getting any action on that fight back in the day, and obviously, I don't think he ever really has. He's just been a big barker and a big talker, and never really wanted to, charge him out himself or do any of that. It's just all, all talk. Yeah. So that's kind of why I didn't do it. Really, if it was a different manager and under different circumstances, absolutely. I've had to send messages before, and, I hit quite a few guys in the minor leagues just pitching inside in general. So it wasn't like I couldn't. Right. It wasn't like I didn't necessarily want to play at that like retaliation beanball thing, but it was a situation where the unwritten rules of the game didn't call for it. It was unjust. And the tough thing at that point in time, I was a rookie. I only had 3 outings in the big leagues, and my ratings were nothing compared to the White Sox and Ozzie Guillen.
Right.
So I didn't do it. I got Blaylock to ground out. He was, kind of probably befuddled about it and going back to the dugout like, what? This guy didn't throw at my rib cage. That was weird. Okay, something's going to be weird. And then, for me, I went to the dugout, had to stay in the dugout as protocol of the White Sox. And next thing you know, Ozzie's on camera doing his thing and blowing me up, and the cover-up started from there. They, told me that I had to go to AAA to work on my command, and, they didn't let me pack my bags. But I was told to really put it out there. I was told to file a grievance with the players' union at that point in time by other players, because they looked on film, and our center fielder that night looked on film and saw first pitch in, second pitch away, third pitch in, fourth pitch in. And just because that second pitch was away, I was off the hook and not like really responsible to do that veterans work in that moment. Right. So the players had a meeting. They kind of called out AJ and said, hey, he's worked his butt off to get to this point. It's not cool that you're trying to throw him under the bus right now and say he didn't protect you. He did his job. You misguided him. And by the way, if you do have a problem with, you getting thrown at or people pitching you inside, charge them out and deal with it yourself.
Right.
Plain and simple, we're not going to do your dirty work. We're not going to clean up for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I back you 100% on that. I remember seeing that game. I remember Ozzy and his tirade out at the mound, and even when they came and cut back in, his tirade going on in the dugout, man. All show just he was special that day, man. And
Yeah, he was. He was on one, that's for sure. And
yeah.
It was tough because I was already starting to go through back spasms, and I had no idea. But growing up, my dad was a Cal Ripken fan, and being an Iron Mike type ball player, every day at the field, that's your job. Like you're gonna be backed up. You're not gonna be 100%. And I took that mentality too far because, like you said, what happened afterwards, I just, I had over 40 appearances that year. I had like 150, 160 innings. My 40 appearances, it was like 20, something like 22 starts and 18 relief outings, like a lot of work between AAA and the big leagues and even winter ball. And, it was going to take its toll. And eventually I told the White Sox that year in exit physicals, like, hey, look, you guys are wondering why now I'm starting to lose control. And I think something's wrong with my back. I don't know what it is. I don't exactly know how to tell you, but it's like I'm not getting loose. And that's all I can tell you. And, I really thought it was my left shoulder that needed to be worked on. And I didn't put my foot down enough about it. Sure enough, it was. By the time I went to the Orioles on waivers, my left shoulder was so bad that, they fixed it. But then you got in, another car accident off the field. And, just kind of that went downhill. Next thing you know, the Angels in 2009 said, yeah, your left shoulder, your non-throwing shoulder has been so bad for such a long time that it's caused kinetic chain compromise, which led your back to blow out and, caused your L5-S1 disc to become degenerative. So that's what happened. I've been fused now for about 10 years, going on 11. Played some independent league ball. I might do it again. But yeah, I lost my fastball. My upper 90s fastball after fusion was only a lower 90s fastball. And back in 2013 and 14, when the velocity world was seeing huge gains and, organizations were having a ton of 20-year-olds throwing above 95, no one wanted a 32, 33-year-old with baggage and damage at that time. And so it became a point where, I had to be extra special in independent league ball to get out. And not only that, I needed extra special treatment with my back, which I wasn't getting, and I wasn't familiar with everything I needed to be familiar on. So it was time to do other things.
Right on.
Yeah.
So that day with Ozzy, I'm just going to touch on it because I don't think a lot of guys here know. But basically, Ozzy Guillen and the organization blackballed you back to the minors and had no intentions of bringing you back because of Ozzy and him not, telling you to do something and it didn't get done. Correct?
Yeah. So it's it is kind of often. It was often written about, and there was banished back to the minors and never came back. I did make it back that September. I was a call-up. But like I said, I was struggling. I was definitely losing command and on the verge of what, the game labels one as getting the yips. And
Right.
I think at that point in time, it was almost easier for the game to label me with the yips and just move on. The game is so good at moving on.
Right.
I mean, I just, after some of the things that have happened recently, you can just see that the game, no one's bigger than the game, and the game, no matter how big you are, moves on. And that's how it felt. It felt for a little bit like, it was easier for everyone to just say he had the yips, like he's not worth what he was. That's some people. I think a lot of people were actually in my corner. A lot of people wanted to see me be successful and overcome that. I didn't understand the magnitude of the injuries to my body. I played high school football. I played strong safety. I was double teamed my senior year by pulling guards and fullbacks as I was the eighth man in the box at 195 pounds. If my older 25-year-old self should have walked onto campus my senior year in high school, and talk some sense into me, that's one of those things that we all wish we could have. But certainly I had, a lot of wear and tear playing strong safety in high school that caught up to me in my days of being a pro pitcher.
Yeah. And that's
So
definitely something a lot of people don't talk about, when we have guys who have been multi-sport athletes. Well, being a multi-sport athlete's great. Depending on the position you played, you can put some intense wear and tear on your body before you even know you've done it. That later pops up in your career and just starts to take its toll.
yeah, so it's one of those where the angel said wear and tear on my spine because of a kinetic chain compromise due to the fact that my front side, my left arm, and the shoulder capsule was so weak that every time I went to rotate, I was not in full posture within my spine. So
Okay.
somewhere in my lower spine, lower lumbar, the torque had to take a load somewhere, and that's where it was taking the load.
Yeah, so you weren't moving through your thoracic spine to create the torque. You were doing it in the lower spine because of that weakness then.
Yeah, and so one of my big issues all the time as a prospect pitcher, whatever, was being over rotational. As
Yeah.
you look at film of some of the great power pitchers, when they get their foot down and they can stick that front side and create hip shoulder separation. For
Mm-hmm.
me, when my foot was getting down, I was already having to pull my front side into a tuck position because I couldn't maintain that posture on my front side without excruciating pain in that shoulder. And
Yeah.
it became, that started, really taking a toll. I believe when I didn't rest, in that 40 appearances in 2006, when I was either starting or relieving, I didn't get enough rest time. And I think that really contributed to things starting to deteriorate.
Right on. And that makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense. Now I'm going to ask a question just
sure.
based on the stuff I've done with working with players in biomechanics and kinetics and stuff like that. So you talk about having the problem with your lower spine. Did you start to experience any discomfort or hip problems with that as well?
Yes, I mean that was or that is going to be something that I have to overcome. My right hip, my uh, inside of it, yeah, it's something that needs attention. I have to do strengthening exercises. I noticed that the range of motion in it is down, but that can trace back. That was more or less like an amateur pitching injury that just kind of probably went into wear and tear. Back in junior college, pitching in a game that should have been called, but it's a fall game and you're trying to get guys innings in, and it's raining a little bit and no one's out there addressing the mound. Next thing you know, you go out there and you throw a very casual warm-up pitch in your first selection, and your front foot slides 6 inches and you feel your back hip pop and you go, that didn't sound good. But you pitch through it. Next thing you know, 20 years later, you're 40 years old going, oh, okay, yeah. And now that you asked that with the lower back, yeah, that did become a big issue with my backside hip the last time I was pitching independent league ball. Not to get into it, but once again, right before independent league ball of 2014, I got in a car accident and I went into back spasms on my right spine. And one of the things I couldn't do, and when people think hip, they think just the ball and socket of the hip, but they don't understand the actual pelvic hip region of it too, and how that can tilt. They really just right off the bat think, okay, my ball and socket might be a little loose and compromised, but no, the pelvic bone, and when it tilts, that kind of pain through your sciatic nerve and all that. What I couldn't do is I couldn't stack my hip or my shoulders underneath my hip, and I couldn't really get that posture. Like when I would go to get into my balance point position, my pitching coach was trying to get me to get more coil, get a little bit more of a turn and a tuck, but I couldn't do that because keeping stacked and then staying stacked as I was separating and going down the mound into land, it was too much pain. And yeah, it was hand in hand. It created, a lack of me being able to stay behind my pitch and more rotational in my cutter. Wasn't as linear in my fastball. Felt like everything lost depth and character and great ability, really, if you look at it that way.
Yeah, right on. That makes a lot of sense when you started to talk about some of that stuff going on. The pelvic tilt can totally mess so much up, and especially if that pelvis is off center or leaning from one side more to the other in a hard shift, it takes some time to get back, and like the compensation and overcompensation that gets done, especially when you're a rotational athlete and you're trying to torque through because that's your base. You're trying to torque through and it's already on a tilt. You're at a major disadvantage with everything else through the kinetic chain, especially as a throwing athlete. It's one of the worst things you could go through.
Yeah, and with that, as we get older, we drive more in and out of vehicles, and how we get in and out of that vehicle quickly, or something that we forget to do when we get out of the vehicle. I mean, the proper way is we're supposed to pivot and get our knees outside first and then get out. But a lot of us will compromise, and then next thing you know, we're pinching the spine and we're putting ourselves into a double or triple play just for some little simple move, but we do it 3 or 4 times a day. And then the other thing we do is when we get into that seat, we don't really fully readjust. And the thing we don't really adjust, we don't adjust our breath. We don't center our spine. We don't center ourselves back into that seat as we're getting into our vehicle. And we don't feel our breath really getting that spine back into pointed neutral and safety, positions don't follow because of that. So we're going to be sitting in a lumbar flexion, but then a thoracic extension, as we just go get milk real quick at the grocery store. All it takes is, a pothole or a sneeze. And next thing you know, we got a tilt or a shift or maybe a wallet or something, and our hips off. And we go 1 week like that. We go do something weird, and boom, now we're really in a downward spiral. And for me, that's how it was in the independent league. I could go not only one game lights out almost perfect, but then the next game I'd be in a tilt or a shift, and I wouldn't be able to get out of the first inning. Or
Right.
same thing, like I could be going perfect in an inning, and I get a PFP and I got to go cover first, and I step into a slightly low spot right before first, and boom, I'm
Mhm.
shifted. Now I'm going to walk 3 and ask to get pulled out of the inning because I'm worthless.
Right.
Unless I know how to call timeout and do some shimmy behind the mound and get myself back right, which at the point, early into your fusion, and for all those lower back people out there in the audience, you're constantly trying to learn. You're constantly trying to evolve and adapt. And when I was first getting back to pitching after my fusion, sure, I had the I don't want to get hurt again, and I don't know if I can do this mentality. But after you get past that, like, this isn't going to be a big deal, there's still so much unknown as far as like what are the stretches that I can do, what's the preventative maintenance that can be done every single day, and do I have time to do that? Does it fit into my schedule? Like, there's a lot of different things that you have to measure, count, and weigh. We only have so much time in the day, and all of us are getting older with kids and stuff. And do I have time to sit down and do my floor routine right now as I'm trying to get ready and pitch again? Probably not as much as I should.
Right.
It's just life
Yeah.
happens. You know.
It sure does. So I'm gonna pivot us a little bit. I'm gonna go into some of the questions we always ask. So,
Sure.
who was the best player you ever played with? Whether they made it or didn't make it.
I mean, I have to say Jim Tomei. I mean, he obviously made it. He's the Hall of Famer. Pure class, and just something special to watch every single day. Um, how he could treat anyone in the room the same way. There's no ego. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Um, and not to mention just I was a left-handed hitter. Yeah, I remember watching him hit. And so my days being up, whether it was, during the regular season or spring training, just watching him hit, it's unbelievable, you know? And
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough one because there were a lot of great guys and a lot of really talented guys that you see along the way. But just his approach every single day. But like I said, just, man, when you talk about watching, a great batting practice, there's something special to watch him work.
Yeah, for sure. And that he was one of those guys that when you watch him go through a batting practice, the sound coming off his bat, he was working the whole time. It wasn't going through the motions in batting practice. That guy got after it during batting practice and was just laying hard swings on every ball,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And that makes a difference. So, when you were pitching, who was a guy that you looked forward to facing, like a guy you absolutely owned all the way through?
You know, I didn't really face too many guys while I was up in the big leagues. You know, with that being said, in the minors, I can't really say that I remember too many guys that I absolutely owned. I remember a couple guys that it was kind of no matter what I did, like I couldn't get them out. Um, and I'd say I think it was my buddy Delwyn Young. Uh,
Okay.
DY, he and I played against each other in the minors in Double A, but we were also teammates in summer ball in Santa Barbara. He was a switch hitter, so I always saw him left-handed, and
Hmm.
he was that type of guy. lefty in the batter's box that it just seemed like no matter what kind of pitch that I wanted to throw, I could never, one, hit my spot, but two, I could never fool him. You know, he just and he kept the game so loose, and he made it a lot of fun. I'm glad I didn't get overexposed, and I'm glad I didn't see him too much in the minor leagues.
Right on.
Yeah.
Nice. So, best place to play.
Best place to play. You know, I think for the highs and lows, you got your debut and you're like, oh, wow, your debut is that. But, you know, I grew up a Yankee fan just by the nature of it being passed down. My dad was born in Buffalo, New York, but his dad was born in New York. And, you know, the Yankees were always on at Grandpa Jer's house. So my best favorite experience was the time I got called back up a month later after that Aussie thing. White Sox, you know, Chicago, we're in New York, we're playing the Yankees, and it's a Sunday day game. So, yeah, I'd have to say for me, my best place was Old Yankee Stadium, without a doubt. That was cool.
Nice. Now, where was the worst place to play?
Oh, man. You're bringing back some memories, some of the bad places. I think the old pro stadium in Amarillo, Texas. That was in the Amarillo or in the American Association.
Okay.
I forgot the name of the ballpark, but man, that field was pretty beat up by the time I went through there. The playing surface was just they have a new field there in Amarillo now, so that's cool. But yeah, back then the clubhouse was super tiny and facilities were broken, and you know, like I said, that was one of those places where I could be 3 steps off the mound covering first base, and I take a step into a 3-inch deep hole, you know, that's lower than the grade of the ground, and next thing you know, I'm in a hip tilt and I can't throw a strike, and you know, I'm throwing wild pitches everywhere, and I'm in a nightmare. Yeah, I go from 2 outs and cruising to a 2-out nightmare in a heartbeat, all because covering first, I almost caught a sniper because the grounds were so bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, I know. I know how those are, man. Oh, I played in some places, man. Batavia, New York was pretty crappy.
Yeah, I was going to say I did a rehab assignment in the New York Penn League when I was with Aberdeen, and we went to a couple different spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of those places saw better days and bad, 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 bad. So, who's the best coach you ever played for?
The best coach that I've ever played for, I really liked playing for Razor Shines. He was one of those pro managers that he looked forward to going to the park every day. He brought a lot of good qualities to the table. He brought a lot of good qualities out of everyone that, you know, he was coaching. Pitching coach wise, and this is at the professional realm. Pitching coach wise, Richard Dotson. Dot was great. He always kept it loose. Always had great insight. He was really successful himself, so you know, you could really get some quality insight from a guy who was really successful. And Dot was really successful in the game with a changeup before a changeup was the pitch that it is today. And so it was cool to, you know, be around that because at that time I took pride in being a little different as far as the mentality within the White Sox organization. I really felt that, you know, they wanted me to throw hard and harder, and I wanted to spin more and more, you know, kind of thing. I want to talk about spin rate and spinning the baseball, and not be infatuated with a velocity measure. Unfortunately, I was 10 years ahead of my time. Dot would give me crap when I'd talk about spin rate and the proper algorithm to come up with, what is now a Bauer unit. But, at UC Irvine, we were talking about Bauer units back in 2000, back when the TV show 24 was out.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was the new Chuck Norris. During PFPs, we were always talking about like what's the real difference, because we had a freshman at UC Irvine who was a second rounder out of high school, and he was a really talented two-way star at UCI. He could throw fastballs to both sides of the plate, and he had really good plus fastball command with a good velocity measure for a freshman. I remember we at UC Irvine, we had John Savage, who was just coming off of having Mark Pryor at USC. So, it was a big deal if you were a John Savage pitcher at that time, because not only did Savage have Pryor, but he also had Zito. So in that little network, who's going to be the next Mark Pryor?
Right.
Who's going to be the next, John Savage protege? And so we were talking about it. I was a fastball with movement guy coming out of junior college. And I really felt that spinning the baseball was more important than hitting your absolute spot. For whatever reason, I played junior college baseball at a baseball park that was really small to left field, and I had to throw sinkers. I had to sink the ball to right-handed hitters, because we had Ivy in left, we had kind of like Cubs uniforms, and it was like the equivalent of pitching in Chicago on the north side with metal bats. So I really had to learn how to keep the ball down, how to throw the ground ball, and get the bad contact. So the next year when I'm being challenged by a freshman blue chip recruit that, fastball command and location is better than, higher velocity with spin and movement, that's where it evolved. And 2000, 2001, we didn't have Doppler radars measuring spin rates on the fastball. We just kind of figured that, well, on a measure, is a fastball going to spin like an engine? Like, are you going to have 1,200 RPM up to 3,000 RPM? Like, who knows, really? Like, and if so, well, then what would be the proper way to measure it? Because you got to include both, not only the velocity, but then the spin rate. And then, okay, well, what does that? And I remember we were just playing around out there, and we just said, okay, well, the coolest thing right now on TV, the greatest influencing show is 24 and Jack Bauer. So how are we going to, quantify or validate this unit? What's going to be the name? Well, okay, well, would it be Bauer and 24 because 24 hours is one full rotation in the show? And also, like, does that mark a full unit, right? You fast forward, you look like down the line now, a Bauer unit is now a 24. Okay. And if you do that math, it's like 87 and like 2,200 or something like right in there, 88, 2,200, right? Why? How? Like, did it really come out of, just nowhere as Trevor Bauer and 24? Like, is that his number, or was it in the pipeline of John Savage, who is then, and so it's kind of one of those where
I don't think anybody in here realizes that when you're talking John Savage and you're talking Zito and Pryor, and then him being over at Irvine with you guys, that John Savage then went on to UCLA and had guys named Garrett Cole and Trevor Bauer. So you're kind of finding out the backstory of how a lot of this stuff Trevor Bauer gets credit for, John Savage already had in the pipeline with these guys. So you guys are getting some killer nuggets here, and you're able to put together the whole story that Trevor Bauer doesn't want you to hear.
Yeah. No, he doesn't. And, I remember with the White Sox laughing with one other prospect and talking about how we were definitely ahead of the times, and that 10 to 20 years from 2000, the game would be totally measured off of what would be like a Bauer unit, the sum total of velocity plus the spin, whatever the way to truly measure. Because there's no way that you could sit there and it was too arbitrary, and it was too subjective to say that a fastball with movement was better or worse than a fastball located with greater or less velocity. Because when you go and you take it to the hitters and you'd say, what do you want to face? Do you want to hit 93 with movement or 95 straight? They're all going to tell you 95 straight they want to hit. They don't want to hit 93 with movement.
Right.
And so, then you got to really go, okay, well, it's just like an engine. And it goes back to it. At that time, I was driving a 6-cylinder Bronco, slow, the 300 inline 6. It's not a fast motor, but it had a lot of torque. And so we were talking about torque and the differences of a V8 versus a V6, because our first baseman had a V8 Bronco. And so I was always laughed at for having the slow Bronco, but I'd laugh and go, well, it's my torque that makes up for it. Just like the torque on my cutter, you can't hit it. So it's interesting how spin rate has evolved. It's interesting how, you see at like a place like UC Irvine, huge. If the audience doesn't know, UC Irvine's like Petco Park, like Padres dimensions. It's huge, absolute huge college baseball field. And you can really break down the spin rate guys at that park, because for me, I didn't have to be a strikeout guy to pitch in that ballpark. And that kind of, now I look back, if I had my spin rate data as an amateur in college all the way up, it would have been a totally different deal, because I was throwing sinkers and cutters down in the zone when I really could have been riding fastballs and throwing sliders out of it, reducing my strikeout to walk ratio, significantly, because I'm throwing baseballs down in the zone, trying to get ground balls and giving a couple extra balls per at bat, searching for the ground ball rather than going off of, sabermetrics and spin rates.
Right on. Yeah, that's really fun, really interesting to get the backstory of that and to see how far that went back with John Savage, back to the time that you were doing that, and probably a little bit before, even with Pryor and Zito in the USC years as well. I'm sure is something that was coming up then too. So that's a lot of fun.
I don't think we coined it. I mean, my junior college coach used to sit in the dugout and yell in certain counts, spin it, just yell out for everyone in the game to hear it, spin it. And he would talk about spin rate, and he would talk about, certain things. And that's where I carried my confidence into UC Irvine. So it's kind of like, hey, was it already there? Was it intellectual property waiting for someone to capitalize on? Sure, maybe. But,
right.
We tried to push it in the White Sox, but it was just, I was too progressive when I would talk about it. And I didn't have, at that point in time, the White Sox wanted to keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Hey, but that's fine. I mean, it's all good now. I think all the technology and everything that's out there 4 guys to not only utilize, but then, apply and learn, like, okay, I don't have to be the guy who's throwing fastballs at the kneecap on the corners to get outs at this level. I can actually throw fastballs in the middle of the zone and off speeds down at the corner and throw my fastball completely by people. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because too many times, I look back as a young pitcher being so worried that I have to hit the bottom corner of the zone, or this guy's going to launch a 500-foot ball on me. And it wasn't the case. A lot of my strikeouts early in my amateur day, I threw a fastball right down the middle, totally expecting it to be crushed, and the guy just took it. Poof. And he was waiting for it to break. So there's a lot of great things about spin rate, that you can take, and hopefully it'll just keep getting better as far as the data and the ability for the game to adjust.
Right on. So let's get into some of the fun stuff. So we talked a little Trevor Bauer. I noticed you have some fun opinions on him that I think a lot of people kind of do right now. So you care to share those?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. I mean, like we talked about earlier, the game just moves on, and you're seeing that the Dodgers just said what luxury cap, what luxury tax. Like, we don't care. We're not gonna let this like dogma overhang our season and take us, off course any more than it already did, or may have, whatever. I just, I think he was getting a little bit big for his situation. Personally, when you mentioned the different pitchers that Savage has produced at the major league level, it gets me off the black sheep list, right? That's personal selfishness right there. Won't put it past anyone. Like, but I'm on, as far as that list, I never really, like, I played junior college football. Not one of Savage's guys has ever played college football. So I was already the anomaly there. But as far as that, like, it's a little, I don't know, like you're in this club, you're in this brotherhood of guys you play baseball with, or, your school that you go to, or the pitching coach that you pitch for. And you feel like you spent days on the field working on developing this knowledge and all this. And then some 15 years later, one of his guys, like, goes and puts all this information that you kind of helped. You threw a brick in that wall at one point in time, some years later, and all of a sudden that whole wall has just got one kid's name on it, right? And you just kind of feel like, wow, man, like that. Who knows? Was that Savage's wall? Was that all of our wall? Like every recruit that Savage had, every pitcher that's thrown a pitch for Savage along the way, did we put brick and mortar in that intellectual wall? And then all of a sudden, one day, one guy just went and said that wall is no longer everyone's, it's just mine. You just kind of feel like, whoa, okay, well, all right. But can you answer this question about it? Where does 24 come up? Why is the number 24? And do it. Like, it's a sliding scale. It could be 93 and 1800, or it could be 88 and 2400, but the number is still going to be right around 24. So why? I mean, like, can he explain that? And how cute would he get trying to explain that? Because that was definitely done during PFP sessions at Anteater Ballpark. Obviously, there's, no written proof of it, and you feel like kind of a crazy person trying to claim it, when it's already been set off. But there's guys that definitely know that I was talking about spin rate and spin units, and really it started as the first like a spin unit, and I remember validating it that it had to be measured in terms of a unit, one complete unit. So, it's not that big of a deal. It could be the Chuck Norris unit. It could be the, Jack Bauer unit, whatever it is, right. Back in the day at UC Irvine, it was badass. And that's why it was a Bauer unit, because it was the truest, most badass form of measuring a pitcher's ability, a measurement of the true fastball. But here's the catch in it, and this is a question that maybe can't be answered. Why doesn't the Trevor Bauer unit, why doesn't it have the different spins? It's only the one spin, right? It doesn't have the gyro spin or the other spins. It's not the true algorithm. So it's like a shell, right? Mm-hmm. That's where I can kind of laugh and go, it's not the true one. It's not the true unit. It's not essentially, it's like looking at square foot versus cubic square feet. Right? Right. And the true depth of the fastball, with the different spins, it's, and we did joke about it back in the day, but I thought it'd be way too narcissistic to coin it this way. But the real unit measurement is called a trace unit. Not because my last name is Tracy, but the real unit is a trace unit because you're supposed to be able to trace its path. And that's truly the way it's defined when it's spinning in its whatever, because it's a trajectory. When it's spinning in its flight, it's going to have to be fully traced, right? To fully understand it. And so that's where, hey, the Bauer unit's out. Now the new one is the trace unit. Maybe you and I can, work on getting that to market and capitalizing on that intellectual property or the audience. For sure, man. But that was the real one, because the Bauer unit is one dimensional and it just covers the backspin. It doesn't cover the other spins.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we've covered that fun. We've covered Trevor Bauer. Like you said, the game moves on. Now, from what I see, the clubhouse probably isn't going to be the greatest place for a guy like him to come back to. Kind of like a divided clubhouse when you talked about the AJ years. Do you see him really being welcomed back in any clubhouses after this is over, one way or the other?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you got to look at like this kind of situation, players and their wives, and the importance of the wife. They say, you can see a lot of players either do really well when they have their home life squared away, or a lot of players not do so well when their home life isn't squared away. And I think it's going to, you can kind of watch and see. I went through it. I was a single guy in the minor leagues, and it was tough for me to go out and hang out with the guys who had girlfriends or were married after the game, because you just have a different mentality. And not only that, the players' wives would be like, well, he's single. What's he going to be looking for when he goes out? And, that kind of thing. You just see slowly but surely, a lot of the Dodger clubhouse guys on their social media just kind of drifted away and said, I'm not about it. Getting to that, 20 years ago, it was a different day and age. Like if you were trying to be on your social media, on your Facebook or on your MySpace or whatever, and you're trying to build your brand, oh no, we're not doing that. But now this game, it's way different. It is all about building that brand. And yeah, I mean, you saw a lot of guys unfollow and just kind of go, oh man, I don't know. Like, it's a tough one to answer. Like, it's even a tough one to talk about right now. Like, who knows where it's going to lay out? But I mean, it's a tough one because pictures don't look good. I don't care what texts say. I mean, I've got a daughter now. Like she's 3.5. Like I wouldn't know what I would think if my daughter ever like had to make a phone call to me and say, "Hey, Daddy, I got to tell you something." You know, I'd be pretty upset.
Yeah, me too. I got a 10-year-old daughter, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I'd be pretty upset, to say it casually. And they're adults doing their thing, but oh man, like I mean, it's tough to even comment on because it's just there's a lot of gravity on that topic, and I mean, it's tough, but you want to play games with a social media influencer, you're gonna play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's how I can figure that one.
Well, to segue from that, you've had some fun on social media too with your favorite guy Ozzy. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. When you talk about like the game moving on, going back to that night after the game, I'm leaving the ballpark, and my phone, as soon as we get under, outside of the tunnel, and we get into reception, my phone is going nuts. It's blowing up, and I once again had no idea the magnitude, no idea the exposure, and yeah, I mean, pardon the interruption. All sorts of clips on whatever other show it was, like Baseball Tonight, obviously, in Sports Center. So everyone calling in, hey, what's going on? What happened? Like, then as the night goes on, and some friends are maybe still out and doing things, you're getting a little bit more aggressive messages like, I hope you're all right. F Oz again, da 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 da. You're getting those kind of messages. But yeah, one thing that he was allowed, where I have issues, and hey, like I said, the game goes on, but Major League Baseball still allowed print of my moment to happen. Like Sport Writer still printed it and whatever. And I don't know if Major League Baseball ultimately has the ability or authority to say, okay, we got to shut this topic off or not. But ultimately, print was still going on some years later about the Ozzie and the beanball incident. And, in the beginning, for the first year and a half, he was allowed to lie and say that he accidentally put me in and I wasn't the right guy for the spot and this and that. And then he kept putting his foot in his mouth, and he ran his course in Chicago, then he ran his course in Miami, and then he was more vocal about like, oh well, yeah, maybe I did order the retaliation and this and that, and maybe I shouldn't have, and it's just kind of, as a major league ball player or professional athlete, like what you're gonna potentially expose yourself to. But like, to climb up the hill that I did, and then have the game do, that kind of thing to me where they, made a lot of effort to cover it up. Like, the game's a game. No one's bigger than it. That's one thing. But the amount of effort they made, some of the White Sox personnel, to cover it up, that's when you're like, holy cow, I'm just a little pissant nobody. And look at the effort they're making to cover this story up. Whoa, was that history book I read in high school for real? Is that what we're reading? Is that for real? Because, I mean, what people are reading about me, they think that's real, and that's not real, and, like, so many times, oh, he was banished by Ozzy and never seen in the major leagues again. Oh, yeah, I was. It wasn't until the following spring training where, I was being finally they're entertaining a trade for me. They wanted $8 million in return. I was drafted in 2002 and I signed for $80,000 and $20,000 for school.
Right.
And by 4 years later in 2006, they wanted $8 million. 8 million, and then like maybe something else. But, so whatever percentage that jump was from 80 grand to 8 million, it's a couple zeros, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just kind of during those times, I'm sitting there, getting like a text, hey, you're so-and-so from whatever, wrote about you again, or someone wrote about you again, your name popped up again, and I'm coaching high school baseball or coaching high school football, trying to recover from my lower back fusion, totally out of the game, totally because the Angels offered to have me get fusion, but I was going to stay in Tempe and stay at their, under their care in their camp. And I was like, man, I'm 30 years old. I don't really know anyone in Tempe. I don't know if I want to have a fusion. I'm going to go try and, see if I can do life without a fusion. And it wasn't but a year later, I was like, I need fusion. Let's have this surgery.
Right.
So, it could have been a lot different for a lot of different reasons if I would have spoke up about my injuries. Plain and simple. I was afraid to speak up about my injuries before that Ozzie Guillen incident because, I was taught there was difference between being hurt and being injured. And, if I was just hurting a little bit, I could get through it. But I pitched hurt too many times and led to severe injuries. So
that's definitely a line you hear when you get into professional sports all the time. Are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah.
They ingrain that into you to get you to keep on playing because you're never injured. Because the other thing they tell you, if you're injured, you're going to get released.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it was. I mean, it's almost 6'2", and, right on the cusp of not being, being a small power pitcher. I knew I was always flirting with that fine line where I didn't have a $1 million signing bonus to fall back on. I wasn't a top 5 round out of college type draft pick. I was kind of like an 8th rounder, and we wish he was like 2 inches taller and threw 3 miles an hour harder, or we wish he was his height but had more command and more polish. So
right.
It was kind of one of those where I look back now. I'm still close with a couple guys that I spent time with in the White Sox. And I'm, for the most part, grateful. The only thing that now with that, every now and then when Ozzy pops off about something, and I feel so inclined to chime in, I'll make a response or something. But, he's on to so many other things. He doesn't want to accept my challenges. He doesn't want to, hop into a ring and do a charity fight like I've challenged him before. Now, years ago,
I've seen those challenges. That's dude, they're epic when you do that. And like,
yeah, it's funny. Thank you.
As far as the stream goes, it's perfect because it's crickets.
Yeah, I mean,
you've had that cricket chirping in the background, so guys have been joking about that. But Ozzy definitely goes crickets anytime you pop off back on him after he makes some asinine comment online, man.
Yeah, I think it gets to be kind of funny now where, like, I know I can chase him off of his rant. It got pretty good when not his brother, but his sons, when that got involved. They started coming after me a little bit after I lit him up, and that's when I was like, wow, that was really good. I got dad so good that the sons had to come in and chime in.
Yeah.
But it drives me nuts. He'll still get on a podcast and go, well, if I was managing the White Sox, dude, you're not. And that was 15 years ago,
Yeah.
And like, get off that bandwagon, buddy. That ship hit a rock and it sunk, And I mean, I can't really say much. I've got 39 days in the big leagues, but I can say as the journey has gone on and wherever I have been during those episodes where he's having an episode and he's having a meltdown, you better believe I'm smiling and I'm happy because, in the dugout in that moment, I wanted to kick his ass so bad. It was not even funny. Like, that's where I broke down mentally in the dugout, and got the crying label. I wanted to tear my jersey off. I wanted to run and charge him. Like, I saw that he was a running back with a football and I was a strong safety and I just wanted to blitz him. That's all I wanted to do in that moment. But I knew that the game of baseball would bury me because he was their golden child at that moment. And he had the greatest, ratings in baseball that year.
Right.
So, if I did that, like, it definitely wouldn't have been good. And, it is what it is. I mean, now I can tell my daughter, hey, I didn't sell out for the man. I'm sorry I don't have a trust fund to give you because of it, but, right. I didn't sell out. And hopefully she can take that into whatever she does, because there's a lot to be being said, like as far as being a father and the influences
sure.
children have.
For sure. And on that note, one of the questions I was asked, what's the best piece of advice you would give anybody out there to them or their kids that are hopeful of playing a professional sport or playing in college one day?
I think the best piece of advice I could provide is take it one step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. We grew up in a very competitive town in Southern California. I went to the same high school that Raleigh Fingers went to, just to give you a breakdown. A very, very solid baseball pedigree at Upland High School in Southern California. So growing up in the Little League systems, the parental push and the parental, involvement is definitely significant. And, the parents talking about, oh, well, you got to accelerate and you got to, play year round and fall baseball. I played Little League in 92, right? 1980. And you look at of the Major League Baseball players born in 1980, I'm probably on the bottom of that list, right? As far as time and service time and whatnot. The top is like Albert Pujols at 1980. I didn't narrow my sport and my craft until 19 years old. Okay. Whereas a lot of those 1980 parents at 12 years old, they had Johnny Stevie or, whoever trying to play year-round baseball and only one position and only that. And the kid was burnt out in 2 years. So the need to diversify versus the need to specialize, I think in the, as far as advice, create an athletic environment, create a positive environment, create a learning platform. And, just because a group of parents or, it might seem like this is the only window, it's not, I guess you could say. So many people are like, wait a second, what? You didn't even go to your junior college as a pitcher, and your first fall you were the ace? And I go, yeah, because by the time I didn't make it as an outfielder, and by the time it's all said and done, the pitchers that I was competing against in junior college, they were POs at 14 years old in travel ball.
Right.
So their athletic ability, was one thing. Their pitch ability was another. My athletic ability was totally different than their pitch ability. And the coaches knew that they could work with my athletic ability versus the other pitchers, pitch ability. And they knew that my pitch ability would go up exponentially because I was willing to work in the drills and I was willing to push myself physically and mentally in ways that I had learned, like in football, twice a days, double days, basketball, 5 a.m., in the wintertime, going to 0 period practice while everyone else is still head in the pillow. But you're there doing wall sits at 5:30 in the morning, and you're the 12th man on the team. You're not going to play this week, but you're just there doing wall sits because your buddies are on the team. It's kind of cool to play basketball, but it really sucks because you're not playing. But, I'm doing wall sits at 5:30 in the morning. So those type of things go a lot further. When you're 12 and 14 and 16, they build character, they build, just athleticism. At 16, yeah, then maybe you might want to narrow down a little bit, but it's really tough. Today's day and age, if you're not 16 and signed on with a verbal agreement at a major university, you're behind the curve.
There was a couple kids who made announcements saying they were going to Nebraska last week as they're heading into their first day of 8th grade. So it's crazy out there. Even with the changes to the rules, you still got kids going to camps at schools, making impressions, and being shot some big dreams there, and walking away and announcing that they're committing to these schools as soon to be 8th graders just blows my mind.
So my perspective, to give some validity or background, my dad was an athletic director at a Division II college and also at a D1 for a little bit. He wasn't the head athletic director. He was an associate athletic director.
Okay.
So he always had a perspective of, okay, well, he probably saw like the incoming freshman athlete that, what percentage of that incoming freshman athlete at the college actually panned out and finished and graduated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if he sees it at that level, then you look back at like all the work it took that athlete just to get to that point as a freshman in college, and then all the work it takes that athlete still to get the next 4 years under their belt and become a senior in college, still participating on the team. So,
Yeah.
he took that perspective and saw like, the sense of like Johnny has to be a pitcher only at 13 years old or else he's not going to get his college scholarship. My dad probably was like, that's not really valid,
Right.
So we're gonna keep doing other sports, and in fact we're gonna withdraw a little bit. We're gonna go have a vacation with the family, and we're gonna go do this and that. And sure, my boys are gonna throw the football and they're gonna be athletic and do activities, but we're not gonna like participate in your fall baseball at 13 years old. Thank you. We're gonna do other things, and we're gonna go play basketball. Sure. And I think that's really tough right now in this age, because you got that 8th grader committing, and I can tell you from experience. I just got done coaching a kid from freshman year in high school all the way to his second year in college. And this is an interesting little story for a lot of the people out there right now, because COVID does apply. So freshman year in high school, this kid actually has the same lower back fusion that I had, and his was a pre-existing injury he had no idea about. He has his fusion. He meets me through a pitching clinic, and they hit it off with me. Obviously, like, hey, you're a pitcher with the lower back fusion. We want to know what you know, kind of thing. Kid goes through high school. For a few different reasons, he ends up going to the one of those Inspiration Academy type things in Florida, right? Mm-hmm. Not IMG, but like the one in Bradenton. Anyways, that bought him time. Now he's taking a partial scholarship to an NAIA school here in Phoenix. So they've been with me for about 5 years off and on doing lessons. And like I told them a lot of the times, you're going through the process, you're on your way, keep going. That's about what I can tell you. And leading up to going to Florida, I said, look, you've done everything you needed to do leading up to this. If you don't go to Florida, you'll never know what could be on the backside of that, opportunity. Just because you're a sophomore without a scholarship or a senior in high school without a scholarship doesn't mean that in 9 months from now you'll be coming home without a scholarship, right? So he does his thing for 9 months. He goes out there to Bradenton, Florida, just goes about his process every single day. Throws, lifts, trains, eats, sleeps, does everything. Next thing you know, a month before he comes home, he calls me up and he goes, Coach, school's talking to me. They're really interested. All right, cool. Well, go out there, have fun, and let me know how it goes. A week later, Coach, I think I'm going to sign a scholarship with them. Incredible. And talking to the parents, like, you guys, as a parent perspective, you never know when it's right around the corner from you. I've coached several kids now that have signed their college scholarship or haven't signed a college scholarship because, some of them were D3 non-scholarship type situations. That's where I was coaching for 3 years. Give you that example. My only recruit, I go and recruit this kid while I'm coaching at a D3, and he has the choice between us and the rival school. He goes, I want to come and I want to play right away. Do I have a chance to play right away? He asked me, and I'm the recruiting coach. And I go, you create your opportunity to play right away by how ready you report to school. If you report to school your freshman fall and you're ready to go and you're making a splash, you create your own destiny. So you answer that question. And for all the parents in this audience, you guys, your kids will create their own destiny. When they're on the mound, they're throwing strikes. When they're at the plate, they're having their quality at bats. Really, there's so much need out there. There's so much opportunity. just believe in the process. Don't get involved with the results. Certain people in the travel ball world, they sit behind home plate. They want to talk about results and results and results. Stay away from the results. Talk about the process. When you're driving home with a kid, talk about what they did in the process of that competition. Don't talk about the results. Get them locked in on the process. Next thing you know, it becomes second to the fun that they're having. And now they're making leaps and bounds because they're just locked into the process, and they're not gridlocked by thinking about the result come competition time. They're not up in the batter's box going, oh man, if I don't get a hit here, what's going to happen? Instead, they're in the batter's box going, all I have to do is control my breathing. Oh, boom, knock, that kind of thing. And it's so incredible how it can change. Like, cross example, you can be a basketball coach. You can call timeout in the third quarter. You can tell your guys in that timeout to relax. They're all going to go, okay, coach, yeah, while they're short breath and they're trying to, recover. Or you can go, all right, guys, breathe. Okay, good job. Take another deep breath. All right, one more deep breath and go get them. Boom. And that's all your timeout is. Next thing you know, they reel out 8 in a row and they play lights out D. And now 2 minutes later, it's not even a game because you said, instead of relax, you said breathe. Instead of saying something good, you said something better linguistically. And that process, that's one thing in the majors that I really noticed. The thought process, not just what's going on, but how guys are talking to themselves. Like, I noticed this thing, a major league bullpen, major league pitcher in his veteran years, he's going to throw a pitch and he's going to miss a spot. And you're not going to know if he missed a spot or if he hit the spot in that bullpen based on how he reacts. A rookie kid, an amateur pitcher, they miss their fastball glove side and down. They're going to have a negative reaction to it. Automatically, the body just discards that effort. There's no logging and labeling that takes place. In fact, negative connotation takes place. So then the athlete beats himself up. Whereas the Major League All-Star, the Greg Maddux, the Mark Burley, they're going to go, oh, that's how I hit that spot. I need to repeat that miss that I just did because that gets me that next strike. And that's a big one that I can tell everyone. Applaud the mistake when you're training your kids or you're coaching. Applaud that, swing and miss or the foul ball. That way the kid knows how to foul a ball off instead of always making fair contact. Just like Tony Gwynn would work on fouling a ball off in BP more so than hitting a ball fair because he wanted to know bat control, he wanted to know barrel control, and that's too much of our process or approach that we lose because we're too infatuated with the result. We want to see 100 mile an hour on the radar gun. We want to see a 475-foot bomb with a certain launch angle. What we don't want to see is that, fastball that was arm side and up and a ball, but the slider comes out of it for a strike. We never want to applaud that in the bullpen because it doesn't look good, but the reality is it probably plays out really well in the game. And we're seeing that now. Like, look at, I'm not going to pick on him, but look at the situation with the Angels and Shoney, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where's his hole?
Where's his hole?
Yeah, where's his hole in the swing? Up and away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up and away, but how many times is he crushing the mistake pitch that a pitcher is trying to throw there, but they can't, and then boom, he crushes it, and so then they don't go there. But Like, look at the other night against the Dodgers, up and away gas, and boom. But look at now, going away from it, from a pitcher's perspective, look at DeGrom. DeGrom was lights out this year, has been lights out in the years past, but he really capitalizes on that arm side and up fastball. You know, up and into righties and up and away to lefties. And, you know, his generation of a pitcher, the 30-year-old pitcher that was in the heart of the travel ball era, along with the Garrett Coles and the Trevor Bauers, they weren't being told that fastball up and arm side was the best pitch that they're ever going to have to set up their off speed. They're being told that the pitch down on the corner at the knees is what they needed. Not to mention, if they did throw the fastball up and arm side, the umpire wasn't calling it a strike. Although it interpreted in the strike zone as a strike, it wasn't cool to call it a strike. And so you get a lot of grief if it was called a strike.
Right.
You know, and that's actually where I chalked up a lot of balls in my career throwing that pitch up and into a right-hander, not too tight to him, but enough to get him stood up. But definitely to the lefty, that fastball up and away, because I backdoored all my breaking ball out of it. And so, yeah, I know if I got that pitch early in the count, if I got that pitch called a strike, I would have struck out a lot of lefties because the zone that they would have to defend, it just would have been completely different. And
it more than doubles at that point from where they're typically looking.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of things. I mean, that's the nature of, you know, when everyone gets out of the game, they talk about how they played in whatever era. And, you know, I was a sinker ball guy, kind of without power numbers, but, you know, I wasn't really pitching like a sinker ball guy. At some stops along the way, you know, I was a reliever and asked to pitch like a power guy. So It was weird. It was a little different.
Yeah, you got to see both sides of it and work both sides of it. And that definitely changes it up in the perspectives. And that's awesome. Well, I just want to tell you thanks, man. We're over 2 hours. This has been awesome. You have been majorly informative. I've loved all of this, man. I know me and you could sit here and talk about this stuff for days on end. I know I can, because with coaching and everything that I still do, I could ask 5,000 questions and just keep on going for days. But it's 11:30 here, back in the Midwest, so I'm going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time and coming out and talking to us here, giving us some great info. Man, this has been a joy, Sean. I really appreciate it, man. And I'm going to keep on following you and watching you working your way back to this comeback to playing some independent league ball. This is going to be a lot of fun, man. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, I'm just trying to get out and spin a ball a few times and, you know, have a good time with some friends that, you know, were there for me. I probably will be signing with like we talked about before the show, the Mavericks of, you know, the Maverick League and the Volcanoes, the Salem Volcanoes. I put the manager, Tony Torquato. We played AAA together the year of that whole Ozzie Guillen thing. One, but two, it kind of like talking about one of those guys that you don't like to face. So Tony and I trained together in California before we ever faced each other professionally. And we have a kind of a fun little connection, because in my only major league start in spring training, he had like a 13 pitch at bat against me in my third inning, and just kind of ended up getting like a little, you know, Texas Leaguer blue pit, and just kind of remembered from that point on, just always looking at him like, man, couldn't you just have hit the first pitch, please? Like,
Right.
why do you have to take 13? So yeah, it'll be good to see him. Life happens, and I haven't seen Tony in over a decade, so it'll be good. It's kind of like, we'll see. If I get to make a relief appearance, and then come back the following weekend for playoffs, I probably won't start at all just because I don't have a pitch count built up, but certainly come out and throw a couple pitches out of relief. That's the game plan.
Nice, man. Well, I'm looking forward to following you along this journey, man. I wish you the best of luck in it. And dude, just have a lot of fun. I know I'd love to get back out there. I'm older than you, man. So those days have passed. Now it's me running around with my kids and watching them learn how to play at 5 years old. So that's my joy when it comes to the game, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank
you. Much appreciated. Hey, everybody else that came out tonight, thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to Sean. Some great comments have been flowing through on the great advice, great nights. Thanks, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody else's time for coming out tonight. Everybody take care, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.